Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel again. That is QCOL. My name is Anjali Mishra. Here we'll be covering different concepts of science. So students, this video is going to be about part 2 of chapter 1 class 10th science, that is going to be about chemical reactions and equations. Students, in part 1 we have already studied about what are chemical reactions. Then we have talked about how we can identify a chemical reaction. We have also talked about how to represent a chemical reaction with the help of chemical equation. And lastly, we have learnt about different steps that we have to follow or different protocols that we have to follow while we are balancing any chemical equation. This video, we will be talking about types of chemical reaction and the other things which we are supposed to know about chemical reactions and equations. So student, the first statement here says there are 5 types of chemical reaction that we are going to study. Number 1, combination reaction. Number 2, decomposition reaction. Number 3, displacement reaction. Number 4, double displacement reaction, and number 5, redox reaction. So basically chemical reactions are broadly classified into 5 major types, starting with combination reaction to decomposition reaction to displacement reaction, double displacement reaction, and redox reaction. So one by one we are now going to cover about all these types of chemical reactions. Let's start off with the combination reaction. As the name says, combination, where two things are going to combine together. Two things, that I mean two reactants, are going to combine together to form a product. So we will say that when two reactants combine to form a product is called a combination reaction. Chemical oxide reacts vigorously with water to produce slag lime, which is also known as chemical calcium hydroxide, and this is going to release large amount of heat. So क्या है combination reaction? वो सारे reactions जहाँ पर दो substances आपस में combine करते हैं, आपस में react करते हैं, so that they could form something new. That would be combination reaction. One very good example of this is slaked lime, like how slaked lime is formed. So we will be using calcium oxide. Calcium oxide, students, has a molecular formula, that is CaO. When this CaO combines with water, that is H2O. Always remember, since both these things are going to combine together, we have placed a plus sign over here, and then when both of them will react together, they'll form calcium hydroxide, whose molecular formula is CaOH2. CaOH2 means slag lime. So it is being formed when calcium oxide reacted with some amount of water. So the next statement says calcium hydroxide reacts slowly with carbon dioxide in air to form a very thin layer of calcium carbonate on the walls. Again, they are giving one very good example of a combination reaction. Calcium carbonate is formed when for 2 to 3 days of white washing and gives a shiny finish to the wall. It is quite interesting to know that the chemical formula for marble is also CaCO3, which is also the molecular formula of calcium carbonate. So students, this was all about combination reaction. We can use n number of examples to describe about combination reaction. Carbon combining with oxygen is combination reaction, where it forms carbon dioxide gas. Water is formed when hydrogen combines with oxygen. So This was all about combination reaction. Now, the next statement about combination reaction says that reactions in which heat is released with the formation of product are also called as exothermic chemical reaction. यानी कि जब भी two things are going to combine together and they'll obviously form a product. So इस टाइप ऑफ रिएक्शन में अगर रिएक्टेंट्स के कंबाइन होने के बाद हीट रिलीज होती है, सो दैट विल ऑल्सो बी कॉल्ड एज एन एक्सोथर्मिक केमिकल रिएक्शन. अब स्टूडेंट्स आपको ख्याल रखना है दैट एक्सो, इफ आई से एक्सो, एक्सो मीन्स outside and thermic means heat. So when heat is given out of a chemical reaction, like वो ठीक है, that it's a good example of combination reaction, but at the same time this is going to be a very good example of exothermic reaction as well. For example, burning of natural gas or decomposition of vegetable matter into compost are also an example of exothermic reaction. So students, with this we have learned some examples of exothermic reactions as well. Moving on to the next segment, the next statement says that it's not true that there is just exothermic chemical reaction. We have some endothermic reactions as well. So exothermic reaction means when heat is given out. अब हम बात करें then what is an endothermic chemical reaction? Thermic का meaning will again going to be release of heat, but endo means when heat from outside is taken into the chemical reaction so that they could form the product. So that is going to be the main difference between exothermic and endothermic chemical reactions. Example is during digestion, like whenever we are digesting food is broken into smaller and simpler substances. For example, rice, potatoes and certain and bread, they contain carbohydrates. So these carbohydrates are broken down to form glucose. This glucose combines with oxygen in the cells of our body to provide energy, and again it's a very good example of an endothermic chemical reaction. So what happens is this glucose has a molecular formula, that is C6H12O6. So when this C6H12O6 will combine with O2, that is oxygen gas, the product is going to be water and some amount of carbon dioxide gas. Water is then used by our body, and carbon dioxide gas, as it's a waste product, it is expelled or it is removed out of our body. So students, this was all about combination reaction, where we have learnt about what is a combination reaction, what are some examples of a combination reaction. Then we have talked about exothermic as well as endothermic chemical reactions. Moving on with the next type of chemical reaction, this is going to be decomposition reaction. Decomposition means breaking down something or decomposing something. So the statement says when a product breaks up into its constituent reactants, the reaction is termed as decomposition reaction. One very good example of this is we have ferrous sulfate. What happens is ferrous sulfate, whose molecular formula is FeSO4, when it breaks it to simpler substances, we say that this is a decomposition reaction. So ferrous sulfate crystals will be losing water when heated, and the color of crystals will also change. Then it will decompose to ferrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, and sulfur trioxide. So it's again a very good example of showing that how one reactant on receiving heat breaks down or decomposes to form simpler substances. Another example of this could be calcium carbonate, whose molecular formula is CaCO3. So, calcium carbonate on receiving heat, it further decomposes to form calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas. So, we have covered two very good examples of decomposition reaction. Now students, the important thing that you people have to note down is whenever we are using heat in order to break down or in order to decompose any compound, these reactions are going to be called as thermal decomposition, because thermal is another term which is being used for heat, and decomposition again means breaking down. Then the next type of decomposition reaction is electrolytic decomposition, which is also known as electrolysis. As the name says, electrolytic, that means here in order to break compound we will be using electricity. So statement says, take a plastic mug as shown in the picture, drill 2 holes at its base and fit rubber stopper in these holes. Insert carbon electrode in these rubber stoppers. Connect these electrodes to a 6-volt battery. Fill the mug with the water such that the electrodes are immersed. Add a few drops of dilute sulfuric acid to the water. Take 2 test tubes that are filled with water and invert them over the 2 carbon electrodes. Switch on the current and leave the apparatus undisturbed for some time. You will observe that the formation of bubble at both the electrodes. The bubble displaces water which is there in the test tube. So we will see that hydrogen will be there at the cathode and oxygen will be anode and is double of hydrogen in terms of volume. So we have seen that how water was basically decomposed with the help of electricity. So this is going to be one very good example of electrolytic decomposition. Talking about the next type of decomposition reaction, which is also known as thermal decomposition, या फिर you people can call it as photolysis. So the first statement says halogen compounds decomposes on exposure of sunlight. Example of this could be when silver chloride will receive some amount of heat or sunlight, it will decompose to form silver as well as chlorine. So they are saying that photolytic reactions are used in black and white photography. The decomposition reaction require energy either in the form of heat, light or electricity or breaking down the reactants. Reaction in which energy is absorbed are known as endothermic reaction. So again, this reaction is a very good example of thermal decomposition, where they are saying that decomposition reaction requires energy either in the form of heat or in the form of light or electricity, so that whenever they'll receive any of these energy forms, they'll break down the reactant. But at the same time they are saying that since we are absorbing energy from the surrounding in order to break the compound, we'll name these type of reactions as an endothermic reaction. So in displacement reaction, we have learned about 3 types of decomposition reaction. I'm sorry, those 3 types of decomposition reaction are, we have talked about thermal decomposition, which is all because of heat. Then we have talked about electrolytic decomposition, which is all about electricity. And lastly, we have talked about photolytic decomposition, which is because of sun's light. Now we are going to talk about displacement reaction. So displacement reaction is being defined by saying that when an element displaces another element from its respective compound of lower reactivity, it is being said to be displaced. In simple terms, जब भी हमारे पास एक एलिमेंट है और ये एक एलिमेंट किसी दूसरे कंपाउंड के साथ रिएक्ट करने वाला है, तो क्या होगा, अगर ये एलिमेंट उस कंपाउंड की किसी एक एलिमेंट से ज़्यादा रिएक्टिव है तो उस एलिमेंट को वो उस कंपाउंड से डिस्प्लेस करके कुछ नया बनाएगा. वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ दिस इज जिंक रिएक्टिंग विथ हाइड्रोजन सल्फाइड. जब भी जिंक रिएक्ट करेगा विथ हाइड्रोजन सल्फाइड, ऑब्वियसली जिंक इज मोर रिएक्टिव देन हाइड्रोजन, तो हाइड्रोजन को उसके कंपाउंड से डिस्प्लेस कर देगा. So the product is going to be zinc sulfide and hydrogen gas. So this is one very good example of decomposition reaction. Then we have some more examples of decomposition reaction. Starting with the first reaction, we have zinc reacting with copper sulfate having molecular formula Zn plus CuSO4 will form ZnSO4 plus Cu. ऐसा क्यों हुआ? Because zinc is more reactive than copper. Therefore, zinc has displaced copper from its compound and has formed something new. See, in order to learn which compound is more reactive than the other one, you people have to learn reactivity series. अब students, reactivity series क्या है? Basically, it's a series where elements, I'm not just saying only the metal part, where you'll find metal, non-metal, metalloids, all the variety of elements, and these elements are placed on the basis of their reactivity. So अब लोग वो एक बार learn कर लेंगे, so it would be easy for you people to remember that which element is more reactive and which one is not. या फिर अगर आपको लगता है that रिएक्टिविटी सीरीज़ एक ऐसा टॉपिक है जो हमें हमारे वीडियोस में कवर करना चाहिए, तो आप लोग प्लीज़ कमेंट सेक्शन में मेंशन करना. डेफिनेटली फ्रॉम डेफिनेटली विद इन एनी ऑफ द नेक्स्ट वीडियोस वी विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट रिएक्टिविटी सीरीज. देन मूविंग ऑन विद द सेकेंड रिएक्शन, वी हैव एल्यूमिनियम रिएक्टिंग विथ copper sulfate. So again, aluminium is more reactive than copper. So copper will again get displaced and the product would be aluminium sulfate and copper. Next reaction is iron combining with copper sulfate. Again the same rule. Copper less reactive, so it will get displaced. So the product would be iron sulfate and copper. Lastly, we have two more reactions as an example of displacement reactions. Students, आप लोग 5 reactions याद ना भी करना चाहो तो try and memorize at least 3 reactions, because we are not too sure that people would get some questions based on displacement reaction, or let's just say you people would get a 2-mark question asking you about give some examples of displacement reaction, or the question can be in this form, that what are displacement reaction and give some examples of it. So for those situations you people have to be prepared. And then the next reaction is we have lead reacting with copper chloride. So whenever lead reacts with copper chloride, copper is again the least reactive element, so the product would be lead chloride and copper. So that is how we can give examples of displacement reaction, where a highly reactive element will displace a less reactive element from its aqueous solution and will form a new product. So since we have talked about all the things related to displacement reaction, now we are going to talk about double displacement reaction. अब students, double displacement reaction क्या होती है? Reactions in which there is an exchange of ion between the reactants are called double displacement reaction. These reactions are also called precipitation reaction. Reason behind that is an insoluble substance is formed when, which is also known as precipitate. So any reaction where we are getting this insoluble substance now as the product, we will be calling these reactions as precipitation reaction. One very good example of this would be, we have silver nitrate combining with sodium chloride. So the product is going to be silver chloride and sodium nitrate. The reason behind that is, it's all about which one is most reactive and which one is less reactive. So silver nitrate, whenever it will combine with sodium chloride, the product is going to be silver chloride and some amount of sodium nitrate. Okay, so now let's just cover some examples of precipitation reaction which are also the double displacement reaction. So we have a solution that contains silver and nitrate ions. Then the other solution contains sodium and chromium oxide ions. So in the product side, we'll be getting a mixture of it, where depending upon which one is most reactive and which one is less reactive, we'll get new products on the other side of the reaction. After this, students, we are now going to talk about oxidation and reduction, or as a whole we can say that now we are going to talk about redox reactions. So students, redox reaction learn करने से पहले it's important for us to know that what are oxidation and what are reduction reactions. तभी तो we'll be able to learn about redox reaction. So it's like, if a substance gain oxygen during a reaction, it is said to be oxidized. मतलब बहुत simple फंडा है that अगर कोई भी substance या अगर कोई भी material is gaining some amount of oxygen, will say that it is oxidized. If substance loses oxygen during a reaction, it is said to be reduced. So if one reactant gets oxidized while the other one is getting reduced, such reactions are called oxidation reduction reactions, or in other terms we can say that these are redox reactions. So if a substance gain oxygen and loses hydrogen in a reaction, it is oxidized. So students, there is just not one way by which we can define oxidation reaction. Oxidation reaction को define करने के लिए there can be multiple ways. So it can be defined in the terms of gaining oxygen or losing hydrogen. So जब भी there is a substance which is gaining oxygen and losing hydrogen, we'll say that oxidation reaction has occurred. And the reverse would be reduction reaction, जहाँ पर if a substance is losing oxygen and it is gaining hydrogen, we'll say it's a reduction reaction. Examples of redox reactions are, we have sodium combining with chlorine. So sodium is the one that is going to lose electron, while chlorine is the one that is going to gain electron. So one more method to describe about redox reaction or to describe about oxidation and reduction. Oxidation and reduction can also be learnt in terms of gain and loss of electron. So oxidation is gain of electron, while reduction is oxidation is losing of electrons, while reduction is gain of electron. So जब भी you see that there is a substance which is losing electrons, we'll say that this is an oxidation reaction, or we can say the substance is getting oxidized. Whereas whenever the substance is gaining electrons, we can say that it's getting reduced. Another example is sodium reacting with oxygen. So sodium will again be losing electron and oxygen will be gaining electron. So since oxidation and reduction reactions are occurring simultaneously, we will say that it's a redox reaction, or it's an oxidation reduction reaction. Some more examples are, we have methane reacting with oxygen to form carbon dioxide gas as well as water. So students, आपको बहुत carefully notice करना है that here we had CH4 reacting with oxygen to form CO2 and H2O. So initially carbon was attached with hydrogen, but once the reaction has taken place, this carbon got attached to oxygen. So since oxygen is being added, it's an oxidation reaction. And here it was 2O2, but now it's 2H2O. So it is getting reduced. So again, a reaction where oxidation and reduction are occurring simultaneously, will say this reaction is a very good example of redox reaction. So with this, students, we have talked about all the varieties of chemical reactions, starting with the combination reaction. Then we have talked about decomposition reaction. We have talked about all the three varieties of decomposition reaction, starting with the thermal one to the electrolytic one to the photolytic one. Then we have talked about displacement reaction, double displacement reaction, as well as redox reaction. And students, this brings us to the last topic of this chapter, which is about corrosion and rancidity. So the first statement says that when a metal is attacked by substances around it, such as a moisture or acid, it is said to corrode, and this process is called as corrosion. So आपने देखा होगा that whenever something is kept outside, like whenever any metal is kept outside, its outer surface is actually attacked by moisture, or sometimes because of acid rain. So we say that now this substance has started corroding, and the process is called as corrosion. So the black coating on silver and green coating on copper are very good examples of corrosion. Moving on to the next statement, it's like corrosion causes damage to car bodies, bridges, iron railing, ships, and to all the objects that are made up of metal, especially those of iron. Corrosion of iron is actually a serious problem. So again, they are trying to explain us that corrosion is not at all a good thing. It causes serious damage to the car bodies, to the bridges, to the iron railing, to the ships, etc. So when fats and oils are oxidized, they become rancid, and their smell as well as taste change. Usually substances which prevent oxidation, that is antioxidants, are added to food containing fats and oils. Keeping food in airtight container also help to slow down oxidation. This prevents the food from becoming rancid and hence chips are flushed with lots and lots of nitrogen gas in order to prevent it from rancidity. Otherwise, see, these materials are packed long back ago, so if they will not be having nitrogen gas within them, their taste as well as smell will change within very less amount of time. So to avoid these conditions, or to prevent food material from such condition, we flush nitrogen gas in their packets. And students, with this we have covered all the topics which were there in chapter 1. I hope both the sessions, like the part 1 and the part 2 videos, would have been helpful for you. Regarding any questions or any queries, you can definitely comment down below, so that we'll get your feedback. And also, if at all you people want anything to be repeated one more time or discussed one more time, try and mention it in the comment section, so that we people will also get that idea. So this was it for this video. In the next video, students, we are going to cover all the questions of chapter 1, that is about chemical reactions and equations. So thank you.